Elias Vorn did not arrive late. As chief protective operative for the Terran Diplomatic Corps, punctuality wasn't a habit, it was doctrine. Every second was accounted for. Every corridor memorized. Every variable anticipated. Which was why the delay irritated him more than it should have. The Kethri embassy was alive this morning, guards shifting posts, aides gliding between chambers, ceremonial banners unfurling beneath vaulted skylights. The air hummed with anticipation. A summit like this happened once in a generation. Elias rounded a marble column, recalculating his route, and slammed straight into someone. The impact sent both of them staggering. Elias caught himself. The woman didn't. She fell backward with a sharp intake of breath, and vanished into the ornamental reflection basin behind her. "SH!" Elias lunged forward. Water exploded upward. A heartbeat later, the woman rose from the pool in a sheet of shimmering liquid, robes clinging darkly to her form. Elias froze mid-step. Her skin was deep cobalt, etched faintly with silver markings that pulsed once before settling. Her eyes, black with luminous irises, locked onto him with lethal stillness. She climbed out of the basin without help. Walked toward him. "You have excellent balance for someone with no awareness," she said coolly. Elias swallowed. "I'm sorry. I didn't see." "Your eyes suggest otherwise," she interrupted, stopping far too close. He realized then that he was staring. "Apologies," he said quickly, forcing his gaze upward. "That was an accident." She studied him like a blade deciding where to cut. "In Kethri space," she said, voice lowering, "accidents are rarely believed." Her finger rose, and tapped the center of her soaked ceremonial mantle. "If you were challenging me," she said, "you should not hesitate." Elias blinked. "Challenging you? Touch," she said flatly. "Or look away." His pulse spiked. "Ma'am, I'm not." "Then you are staring without intent," she snapped. "Which is worse?" Two Kethri guards at the far end of the corridor had gone rigid, watching. Perfect, Elias thought grimly. First day. First disaster. She stepped back abruptly. "Follow me, human!" "I what?" She turned without waiting. Against every instinct, Elias followed. The chamber she led him into was private, circular, lined with soft bioluminescent panels that adjusted as they entered. The doors sealed with a whisper. She turned. "My name is Selira Keth," she said. "Daughter of High Envoy Theros." Elias felt his stomach drop. Of course she was. "Elias Vorn," he said carefully. "Terran Security Liaison." Her gaze dragged over him, measured, assessing. "Good. I will remember it." "That's not comforting." She removed her outer robe, water cascading onto the floor. "It shouldn't be." He cleared his throat. "For the record, I didn't push you." "You rushed," she said. "You stared. You hesitated." Her eyes narrowed. "You invoked uncertainty." "I didn't invoke anything. In my culture," Selira said, "close observation followed by refusal to act is a provocation." Elias stared at her. "That sounds incredibly inconvenient." She almost smiled. Before he could respond, the door chimed. Two guards entered. One spoke without looking at him. "Operative Vorn. You will accompany us." Selira folded her hands behind her back. "I have already explained the incident to my father." Elias shot her a look. "You explained it how?" She met his gaze calmly. "As a challenge of proximity." His heart dropped. "A what?" High Envoy Theros was exactly as intimidating as Elias expected, tall, scar-marked, radiating quiet authority. He listened without interruption. Then he said, "Some on the council demand your removal." Elias nodded once. "Understood." "Others demand sanction." Elias exhaled slowly. "And a few," Theros continued, "suggest interspecies discipline." Cold settled in Elias's chest. Before he could respond, Selira stepped forward. I proposed an alternative. Barros inclined his head. Explain. The human engaged me under the ancient rite, she said evenly. The challenge of proximity. Elias turned to her sharply. You told them that on purpose? Her eyes flicked to him, just once. If I had called it an accident, she murmured, they would have called you weak. Barros studied Elias anew. Then the challenge must be completed. Elias swallowed. Completed how? Celira answered before her father could. You will serve as my ceremonial shadow until the rite concludes. Elias stared. Shadow as in standing nearby? Theros's mouth curved thinly. Closer. Celira stepped into Elias's space, voice low. Constant. Elias exhaled. So if I fail? You dishonor us both, she said. And if I succeed? Her eyes darkened. Then, she said softly, the challenge becomes mutual. Silence fell. Barros gestured toward the door. Your quarters will be relocated. Immediately. As Elias was escorted out, Celira's voice followed him like a promise. Do try not to run this time, human. Elias learned very quickly that Kethri architecture was not designed for comfort. His new quarters were elegant, minimal, and unmistakably intentional. Smooth stone walls that shifted hue based on light, a low platform bed, and a single narrow desk carved from translucent alloy. Everything about the space felt ceremonial rather than lived in. The problem wasn't the room. It was the door. The connecting door. It stood opposite his bed, seamless and unmarked, except for the faint pulse of Kethri script running along its frame. Celira's quarters lay on the other side. Elias dropped his duffel and scrubbed a hand over his face. This is not happening, he muttered. A soft chime answered him. The door slid open. Celira stepped through without hesitation, fully dry now, her robes replaced with fitted diplomatic attire, dark, layered fabric traced with subtle metallic threads. She surveyed the room with idle curiosity. You adapt quickly, she said. I cope, Elias replied. There's a difference. She walked a slow circle around him, her presence immediately disruptive. Not threatening, focused. The challenge of proximity requires consistency, she said. You must remain within one arm's length. Elias glanced down. We're well within that. Good. She stopped in front of him. Do not fall behind. Do not walk ahead. Do not withdraw. He lifted an eyebrow. You're really selling this. Her gaze sharpened. This is not punishment for me. That makes one of us. Celira tilted her head. You resent this. I resent being politically tethered to someone I just met, he said evenly. No offense. Some taken, she replied. But your honesty is refreshing. She raised her wrist and pressed the sigil embedded beneath the skin. A soft blue band of light flickered, and Elias felt a brief warmth around his own wrist. He looked down. An identical band pulsed there. What is that? He asked. The tether, Celira said calmly. If you exceed permitted distance, the council is alerted. Elias stared. So I'm literally leashed. She considered. That is a human word. But yes. He laughed once, incredulous. Unbelievable. Celira's lips twitched. You will find disbelief is common during this rite. The first public appearance came sooner than Elias expected. They entered the eastern concourse together, Celira gliding forward with practiced authority, Elias matching her stride with professional precision. The tether hummed faintly between them, invisible but unmistakable in sensation. Every Kethri in the hall noticed. Conversation slowed. Heads tilted. Eyes followed. Some gazes were curious. Others were sharp with suspicion. One elder paused mid-step as they passed. The human remains close, he observed. He understands the right, Celira replied smoothly. Elias resisted the urge to comment. They moved through diplomatic checkpoints, ceremonial alcoves, and audience corridors. With each step, Elias became increasingly aware of how often Celira adjusted her pace to match his, not leading, not yielding. Equal. At one point, the corridor narrowed. Their shoulders brushed. "You're tense," Elias murmured under his breath. "I am observant," she replied without looking at him. That wasn't a denial. Her eyes flicked to his. "You speak too freely. You haven't told me not to." She stopped walking. The sudden halt nearly sent him into her. "That," she said quietly, "is intentional." A group of attendants passed them, whispering rapidly in Ketheri dialect. Elias caught fragments: reckless, ritual, human. "Let me guess," he muttered. "I'm a scandal." "You are a variable," Celira said. "We dislike variables." They resumed walking. By mid-cycle, Elias's shoulders ached, not from strain, but from awareness. Every movement mattered. Every reaction was observed. By late cycle, they reached the training wing. And waiting inside was someone Celira clearly hadn't hoped to see. Her posture stiffened. "Ah," came a sharp voice. "So this is him." The woman standing there was older, broader in build, her markings deeper and more pronounced. Her gaze locked onto Elias like a targeting system. "And Khyven," Celira said tightly. Khyven circled Elias once. "Human," she said. "You stand too comfortably." "I've been uncomfortable all day," Elias replied. "That was not permission to speak." Celira stepped subtly closer to him. Khyven noticed, and smiled thinly. "Oh," she said. "This will be interesting." And Khyven did not leave immediately. That, Elias learned, was intentional. She lingered near the training hall entrance, arms folded, watching Celira and Elias with open scrutiny, as if waiting for one of them to falter. "You invoked an ancient rite," Khyven said at last, eyes never leaving Elias. "Without counsel. Without family consent. There was no time," Celira replied evenly. "There is always time," Khyven snapped. "You chose spectacle." Elias shifted slightly, the tether humming as he moved. "With respect," he said carefully, "this spectacle happened because I ran into her." Khyven's gaze snapped to him. "You ran into the daughter of the High Envoy during Summit Week?" "Yes," Elias said. "I'm beginning to see how that's frowned upon." Celira shot him a warning look. Khyven studied him again, slower this time. "You're calm," she said. "Too calm." "I work security," Elias replied. "Chaos is my baseline." Khyven stepped closer. Close enough that Elias could see faint scars along her jawline. "Do you know what you are to my people, human?" He didn't answer immediately. He chose his words. "A complication." Khyven smiled humorlessly. "A test. One my niece must not fail." Celira's voice hardened. "Enough." Khyven's gaze flicked to her. "You forget yourself." "No," Celira said. "I remember exactly who I am." Silence stretched. Khyven exhaled through her nose. "Very well. But hear this, human." Her eyes locked onto Elias. "If she falls because of you, it will not be you who suffers the most." Then she turned and left without another word. Elias let out a slow breath. "Your family has a way with encouragement." "That was restraint," Celira replied quietly. He looked at her. "You okay?" She didn't answer immediately. "That," she said finally, "is why this rite cannot fail." They didn't tell Elias when the trial officially started. He realized it only when Celira stopped in the middle of the corridor and turned to face him. "The council has agreed," she said. "The first trial begins now." Elias straightened instinctively. "What are the rules?" Celira met his gaze. "Endurance. Composure. Presence." He frowned. "That's vague." "Yes." She raised her wrist again. The tether brightened, tightening subtly, not physically, but perceptually. Elias became acutely aware of distance, orientation, timing. "You will remain at my side for one full Cathary cycle," she said. "No withdrawal. No hesitation. No complaint." Elias blinked. "That's it." Celira shook her head slowly. "You misunderstand. This is not timekeeping." "Then what is it?" She stepped closer. Their shoulders brushed. "It is psychological exposure," she said softly. "You will be seen, judged, tested without warning." A pair of elders approached from the opposite direction, eyes sharp. Celira inclined her head with flawless precision. Elias mirrored her a half-second later. "Lady Celira," one elder said, "the human remains." "He will," she replied. The elder studied Elias. "For how long?" Elias answered before Celira could. "As long as required." Something flickered in the elder's gaze. They moved on. By mid-cycle, Elias realized the truth. The trial wasn't about proximity. It was about reaction. Aides brushed past too closely. Guards blocked corridors just long enough to force awkward pauses. Officials made pointed comments, some dismissive, others provocative. Through it all, Celira remained steady. And watched him. "You haven't asked why this matters," she said quietly as they walked. "I figured you'd tell me when you wanted to," Elias replied. Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "Cathary warriors value control," she said. "Distance. Self-containment." He nodded. "This trial strips that away." They entered a quieter wing, footsteps echoing softly. "And what happens if I fail?" Elias asked. She stopped walking. "If you falter," she said, "they will say the human challenged what he could not honor." "And you?" Her voice dropped. "Then they will say I misjudged." Elias met her gaze steadily. "I don't fail." Celira searched his face like she was looking for cracks. "You say that easily," she murmured. "I mean it." She exhaled slowly. "Dawn will test that." They were escorted into the lower transit wing without explanation. The air changed immediately, cooler, denser, faintly metallic. The walls curved inward as the corridor descended, illuminated by soft, embedded light that pulsed in slow intervals. Elias noticed the guards first. Too many. Too quiet. "This wasn't on the schedule," he murmured. "No," Celira replied. "It was added." The corridor narrowed ahead. An attendant stepped forward and gestured toward the passage. "The first isolation measure," he announced. "Proceed." Elias glanced at Celira. "Isolation usually means alone." "It means removed from support," she said. "Not from each other." They entered. The walls slid inward behind them with a low, resonant seal. The space reduced to just over 2 meters wide. Then less. The tether flared, warm, insistent. Elias felt it before he thought it. He adjusted his stance automatically, angling his body so Celira wasn't forced back. She noticed. "You're compensating," she said quietly. "Habit. Most would prioritize themselves. Most I'm trained to protect diplomats." The corridor sloped further, the ceiling lowering just enough to force awareness of posture. Their shoulders brushed continuously now, movement synchronized whether they intended it or not. The lights dimmed. A voice echoed through the corridor, disembodied and calm. "Maintain proximity. Do not speak unless required." Elias exhaled slowly through his nose. "This is deliberate," he whispered anyway. "Yes," Celira replied. "They want discomfort." The corridor constricted again. Now there was no space between them. Elias could feel her breathing, steady, controlled, but not detached. The warmth of her arm against his side. The faint vibration of the tether humming between their wrists. "You can step back," she said softly. "There is no back." Her lips curved faintly. "Precisely." A sharp incline forced them to stop. The floor shifted, reorienting. Elias instinctively reached out, his hand stopping just short of touching her waist. He froze. The tether pulsed brighter. Celira looked at his hand, then up at his face. "Permission," she said quietly. He met her eyes. "To stabilize you." She nodded once. His hand settled at her side, firm but careful. The corridor stopped moving. The silence that followed was heavy and charged. They were left there. Minutes stretched, unmeasured. The corridor didn't open. The lights didn't change. Elias became acutely aware of every point of contact. Her weight shifting subtly as she balanced. The warmth beneath his palm. The tether's steady pulse syncing disturbingly well with his own heartbeat. "You're thinking too loudly," Celira said. He huffed a quiet breath. "Occupational hazard." Her gaze remained forward. "You could release me." "If I do," he said, "you lose balance." She tilted her head slightly. "You assume I need you. I assume gravity works the same for both of us." A pause. "You're not wrong," she admitted. Another silence. This one thinner. "Elias," she said quietly. "Yeah. This rite was designed to break emotional distance," she said. "Not to encourage attachment." He didn't move his hand. "Good to know," he replied. Her eyes flicked to his. "Your pulse is elevated. So is yours." She didn't deny it. The tether pulsed brighter, responding not to distance, but to something else entirely. The voice returned. "Subject response noted." Celira stiffened. "They're measuring more than proximity." "They always were," Elias said. The floor shifted again, just enough that Celira's balance wavered. Elias tightened his grip instinctively, pulling her closer. Her breath caught. The tether flared white-hot for half a second, then stabilized. The corridor lights brightened. The door at the far end slid open. "Trial phase complete," the voice announced. They didn't move immediately. Elias looked down at her. "You okay?" She met his gaze, something unguarded there now. "Yes." A beat. "You didn't hesitate," she added. "I told you," he said quietly. "I don't fail." Her lips parted, then she stepped back, just enough to break contact. The tether dimmed but didn't disappear. "Come," she said, voice composed again. "They will have opinions." As they walked toward the open exit, Elias realized something unsettling. The trial hadn't just tested proximity. It had rewritten it. The council chamber was colder than the corridors below. Not in temperature, but in intent. Celira and Elias stood at the center of the circular floor, the tether still faintly visible between their wrists. Above them, the counselors sat in elevated tiers, their expressions carefully neutral. A holographic lattice shimmered to life. "Trial metrics," an elder intoned. "Physiological sync exceeded expectation." Elias glanced sideways. "That sounds bad." "It sounds noteworthy," Celira replied under her breath. The lattice expanded, displaying layered data, heart rhythms, reaction times, neuroresponse patterns. Elias didn't understand most of it, but one line glowed brighter than the rest. "Mutual stabilization event detected." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. "That event," another counselor said, "was not part of the rite's original parameters." "No," Celira agreed calmly. "It was not. Yet it occurred," the counselor pressed. "And without command." Elias shifted his weight. "For what it's worth, she would have fallen." Several eyes turned to him sharply. "You presume knowledge of Kethri balance?" a counselor asked. "I presume physics," Elias replied evenly. Silence followed, then a few restrained nods. "The human responded instinctively," the first elder said. "Without hesitation. Without dominance." Celira lifted her chin. "Which satisfies the right." "It complicates it," Kyvan's voice cut in from the upper tier. She stepped forward, gaze sharp. The tether responded to emotional resonance, not distance. The chamber stilled. That is unprecedented, an elder admitted. Elias felt the tether warm slightly at the word. Unprecedented. Therefore, Khyven continued, the human can no longer be considered an external observer. Celira's fingers twitched. Elias frowned. I didn't apply for anything. You were measured, Khyven said. And found reactive. Celira spoke then, clear, unwavering. If he is reclassified, it will be under my authority. A pause. The council exchanged glances. Accepted, the elder said. For now. Elias leaned closer to Celira. That sounded like a promotion with a warning label. It was, she murmured back. They were dismissed without ceremony. Outside the chamber, the atmosphere shifted immediately, less formal, but heavier with implication. You challenged them, Elias said quietly as they walked. I protected jurisdiction, Celira replied. There is a difference. They stopped at a balcony overlooking the lower city. Light from the bioluminescent structures below cast soft reflections across Celira's markings. The council will watch us closely now, she said. Every interaction. Elias rested his forearms on the railing. They already were. Yes, she said. But now they expect outcome. He turned to her. And what do you expect? She didn't answer right away. The right allows for a divergence point, she said finally. A moment where the tether may be released, by choice. Elias looked down at their wrists. The band pulsed faintly steady. And if we don't? Then the right continues, she said. And the interpretation changes. He met her gaze. Is that bad? Her eyes searched his. No politics now. No counsel. Just honesty. It is uncharted. Elias considered that. I've operated in uncharted territory before, he said. Usually means someone's afraid to label it. A corner of her mouth lifted. You make danger sound tolerable. I make it manageable. She stepped closer, not enough to trigger the tether, but close enough to matter. The next trial will not be controlled, she said. There will be provocation. Pressure. They will test intent. Mine or yours? Both. Elias nodded slowly. Then here's my question. She waited. Is this still something you're enduring? He asked. Or something you're choosing? The tether pulsed, once. Celira didn't look away. I am choosing, she said quietly. Elias exhaled. Good. She tilted her head. That answer was immediate. Yeah, he said. So was yours. The city lights flickered below them, vast and watchful. Above, the council chambers remained silent. For now. They announced the next trial without warning. A public convergence. The plaza filled quickly, tiers of observers, diplomats from allied systems, security units lining the perimeter. At the center stood a raised platform etched with ancient sigils, faintly glowing. Elias scanned the crowd automatically. Too many sight lines. Too many variables. This is theater, he muttered. Yes, Celira replied. And punishment. They stepped onto the platform together. The tether flared brighter than before, visible now to anyone watching, a thin band of light linking their wrists. A herald's voice carried across the plaza. The challenge of proximity enters its demonstrative phase. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Celira's posture was flawless, chin lifted, shoulders squared. Elias matched her stance without thinking, grounding himself beside her. Provocation will be introduced, the herald continued. The bonded must maintain composure, cohesion, and intent. Elias leaned closer. Define provocation. She didn't answer. The platform shifted. Holographic projections burst to life around them, scenes, voices, images layered with precision. Human insignias fractured and reformed into scenes of failure. Compromised missions, fallen teams, classified footage Elias hadn't seen in years. His jaw tightened. Psychological exposure, Celira said softly. For you. Then her projection appeared. Kethery halls bathed in red light. A younger Celira stood alone before the council, her authority stripped, Khyven's voice echoing accusations of weakness, of misjudgment, of attachment. Elias felt the tether surge. You didn't tell me they'd do this, he said tightly. I did not know, she replied. And this time, there was anger beneath the calm. The crowd watched in silence as the projections intensified, each tailored to fracture focus. A voice whispered through the sound field, human, familiar. You don't belong here. Elias closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, Celira was watching him. Not the projections. Him. Anchor, she said quietly. He inhaled slowly. I'm here. The tether steadied. The projections flickered, then shifted tactics. A Kethery official stepped forward, voice amplified. Human Elias Ward. You may withdraw. A hush fell. Withdraw. The official continued. And the right ends. You return to your people unbound. Elias turned to Celira. Her face remained composed, but her eyes told the truth. This was real. This was the divergence point. The official's gaze locked onto Elias. Choose. Elias looked out at the crowd. At the council tiers above, at Khyven's unreadable expression, at the open space beyond the platform. Then he looked back at Celira. What happens to you if I leave? He asked. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. Answer me, he said quietly. The council will interpret it as confirmation, she said. That I misjudged. That the bond was asymmetrical. Elias nodded slowly. And your position? Diminished, she said. Possibly revoked. The tether pulsed, sharp, insistent. The official raised his hand. Your silence is an answer, human. Elias stepped closer to Celira instead. The crowd murmured. I'm not silent, Elias said clearly. I'm deciding. He reached down and clasped her hand fully this time, not stabilizing, not reflexive. Intentional. The tether flared brilliantly, light arcing between their wrists. I stay, he said. A ripple of shock moved through the plaza. Celira's breath caught, just once. You do not owe this, she said softly. No, he agreed. I'm choosing it. The projections shattered into fragments of light and vanished. The platform stilled. The herald's voice returned, strained. Intent registered. Khyven stood abruptly. This was not the design, she snapped. No, Celira said, voice ringing clear across the plaza. But it is the result. She turned to the council. The human has demonstrated agency under provocation. The right has been honored. The tether dimmed, then stabilized into a deeper, steadier glow. The official lowered his hand slowly. The trial continues. The crowd erupted into low, urgent conversation. Elias leaned in, voice low. So, what did I just sign up for? Celira looked at their joined hands, then up at him, eyes bright with something dangerously close to relief. No, she said quietly. You are no longer a participant. Then what am I? Her answer was immediate. An ally, she said. By choice. Above them, the council watched, no longer measuring proximity. Now they were measuring consequence. The backlash was immediate. By the next cycle, the council chamber was sealed under high deliberation, sigils glowing crimson along the walls. Celira stood alone at the center this time. Elias was barred from entry, which told him everything. He waited outside the chamber doors, arms crossed, posture rigid, listening to nothing and everything. Muffled voices rose and fell beyond the barrier. Sharp. Accusatory. You are overstepping. Khyven's voice cut through clearly enough to hear. I am exercising mandate, Celira replied, calm but steel-edged. You allowed the human to remain. He chose to remain. That choice destabilizes protocol. It fulfills it. A pause, longer than the others. The council questions your judgment, an elder said. Elias clenched his jaw. Inside, Celira lifted her chin. Then the council must question the right itself. That landed. Outside, the doors vibrated faintly as the chamber reacted, systems adjusting, authority being tested not by force, but by precedent. Finally, the doors slid open. Celira emerged alone. Her expression was composed, but her shoulders were tight. Well? Elias asked quietly. They have invoked formal contest, she said. My authority will be reviewed. He frowned. Reviewed by who? By a challenger. Khyven stepped into view behind her. I will stand, Khyven said. The air went still. You cannot, Celira said. You are family. That makes me qualified, Khyven replied coolly. And invested. Elias stepped forward. What kind of contest? Khyven's gaze shifted to him, sharp, appraising. A demonstration of command. Celira turned to Elias. This is not physical, she said. It is influence. Resolve. Alignment. Good, Elias said. Because if it were physical, I'd have words. Khyven ignored him. If I win, the human is removed from the right. Permanently. And if I win, Celira said evenly, the council recognizes the bond as autonomous. Khyven smiled thinly. You would tie your authority to him. Celira didn't hesitate. I already have. The contest was scheduled for dawn, which gave them exactly one cycle. They stood on the quiet edge of the city, overlooking the bioluminescent layers below. The tether glowed softly between them, not demanding, not reactive. Just present. This is where I tell you it's okay to leave, Celira said quietly. Elias didn't look at her. This is where I tell you no. She turned to face him. If Khyven wins, you will be ordered away. Forcefully. And if you win? She hesitated. Then the council loses leverage. Elias nodded. Sounds like a risk worth taking. She studied him. You understand what permanence means here. I understand commitment, he said. Permanence is just a long version. For the first time since this began, Celira laughed softly, brief, real. You are dangerous, she said. So I've been told. She stepped closer. Not compelled. Not tested. Chosen. There is something the council does not know, she said quietly. Elias raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. The tether responds to mutual intent, she said. Not ritual structure. He glanced down at the glowing band. Meaning? If we act together, deliberately, it strengthens beyond council parameters. Elias met her gaze. So, weaponized trust. Her lips curved. Precisely. He considered that, then extended his hand. Then let's stop reacting, he said. And start acting. She placed her hand in his, fully, without hesitation. The tether brightened, not flaring, not surging. Settling. Above them, unseen, council instruments spiked, registering a level of coherence they did not yet have language for. Celira exhaled slowly. Dawn will change things, she said. Elias squeezed her hand once. Yeah, he replied. For them. Dawn over the Ketheri capital was not marked by sunlight. It was marked by alignment. The city's upper rings rotated slowly, translucent structures sliding into harmonic position. As they locked, the bioluminescent veins running through the architecture brightened in unison, signaling the beginning of formal contest. Elias felt it before he saw it. The tether warmed, steady and deliberate, as if responding to something larger than either of them. This place is waking up, he murmured. Yes, Celira replied. And watching. The contest chamber was not circular like the council hall. It was linear, long, narrow, and unforgiving. Two raised platforms stood at opposite ends, facing one another across a polished expanse of living stone that reflected posture, movement, and, more subtly, intent. Khyven stood waiting when they entered. She wore ceremonial armor, dark and layered, her markings emphasized rather than concealed. Authority radiated from her. Not inherited, but earned through decades of command. You arrived together, Khyven observed. We act together, Celira replied. Khyven's eyes flicked to the tether between them, now visible even in the ambient light. That will be your undoing. Or your miscalculation, Celira said. The chamber sealed. A council voice resonated through the space. Formal contest of command will proceed. Authority shall be demonstrated through coherence, influence, and outcome. Khyven stepped onto her platform. Celira moved toward hers, then stopped. She looked at Elias. This was the moment the council expected separation. Protocol dictated it. Instead, Celira extended her hand. Elias didn't hesitate. The instant their hands clasped, the stone beneath their feet responded, light rippling outward in concentric patterns that crossed the chamber and climbed Khyven's platform. A murmur echoed from unseen observers. That is irregular, Khyven said sharply. That, Celira replied calmly, is alignment. The first phase began without warning. The chamber projected scenarios directly into the air: political crises, military stalemates, ethical fractures. Khyven responded instantly to each, issuing commands with precision, restructuring outcomes through decisive authority. She was brilliant. Elias could see it clearly. But Celira didn't counter her. She listened. Then she spoke, not commands but questions. Redirects. Subtle reframings that forced the scenarios to evolve rather than comply. The chamber hesitated. Its systems recalibrated. Khyven frowned. You hesitate, she accused. Command requires certainty. No, Celira replied. It requires sustainability. Khyven gestured sharply. You rely on him. I integrate him, Celira said. Elias felt the tether respond, not pulling, not tightening, but clarifying. His thoughts aligned naturally with hers, not merging, but synchronizing. Like two systems finally speaking the same language. A new scenario formed. This one human. A joint Ketheri, Terran operation gone wrong. Competing chains of command. Cultural misalignment. Escalation toward catastrophe. Khyven moved to override Terran leadership entirely. The chamber accepted her solution, then flagged instability. Celira didn't speak. Elias did. Your outcome fails in Phase 3, he said evenly. Khyven snapped her gaze to him. You are not authorized. I'm relevant, Elias replied. The chamber paused. Relevance was a recognized metric. Elias continued. You neutralized conflict by dominance. Humans don't respond to that. You get compliance briefly, then resistance, then collapse. The projection recalculated. Failure probability rose. Khyven's jaw tightened. Celira didn't smile. She simply said, Outcome matters more than obedience. The chamber registered a shift. For the first time, Khyven's platform dimmed. Section 17. What the Council didn't anticipate. The final phase was never meant to be survivable for both sides. That was the truth Khyven had always understood. Formal contest wasn't about proving superiority. It was about forcing a fracture. Isolation. Exposure of weakness. The chamber darkened. The floor between the platforms dissolved into a void-like projection, depthless, disorienting. Final phase, the council voice announced. Command under loss. Khyven straightened. Remove the human. The chamber hesitated. Elias felt it, the system querying authority, cross-referencing Celira's earlier declarations, the tether's anomalous coherence. Denied, the chamber said at last. A shock flickered across Khyven's face, gone almost instantly. So, she said quietly. You've rewritten eligibility. No, Celira replied. We revealed it. The projections shifted again. This time, the loss was personal. Khyven was shown command failure, units lost because she hesitated to adapt. Allies withdrawing because she refused to yield symbolic ground. Moments where control had cost lives. Her posture remained rigid, but the chamber detected strain. Celira's projection followed. Her loss was different. She was shown success, followed by isolation. Authority maintained at the cost of connection. A future where she ruled flawlessly and alone. The chamber waited for destabilization. It didn't come. Elias felt Celira's grip tighten, not in fear, but in resolve. This future is incomplete, Celira said calmly. It lacks continuity. Khyven laughed sharply. You would trade certainty for vulnerability. I would trade stagnation for evolution, Celira replied. Khyven stepped forward to the edge of her platform. And when he leaves? When his people call him back? What remains of your authority then? Elias answered before Celira could. Then she still stands, he said. Because it won't be borrowed. The tether surged, not violently, but decisively. The chamber reacted as if struck by a harmonic frequency it had never recorded. Systems flared. Projections destabilized. The void between the platforms collapsed, stone reforming into a single continuous surface. Unification. The council voice returned, no longer neutral. Contest parameters exceeded, it said. Authority convergence detected. Khyven staggered back half a step. No, she said. This was not the design. Celira stepped forward, pulling Elias with her, onto the same ground. You designed for control, Celira said. You did not design for consent. Khyven looked at Elias then, not with hostility, but something closer to grim understanding. You stay, she said. Yes, Elias replied simply. The chamber went silent. Finally, the council spoke. The contest concludes, the voice said. Authority recognized. A pause. Lady Celira retains command. Another pause, longer. The human Elias Ward is hereby acknowledged as a bonded external authority factor. Elias blinked. That sounds permanent. Celira exhaled slowly, relief and gravity intertwined. It is, she said. Above them, unseen by most, council instruments shut down one by one. For the first time in generations, the system had no corrective action prepared. Because nothing had broken. Something had changed. Recognition, Elias quickly realized, was not a title. It was a responsibility layered over every interaction, every decision, every glance he made in the Ketheri capital. The council's declaration had changed nothing outwardly. The city continued its harmonic rotation, bioluminescent veins pulsed rhythmically, and the upper rings shimmered with silent coordination. But to Elias, everything felt altered. They exited the contest chamber together, the tether still faintly glowing between them, a subtle pulse of alignment. The hallways seemed to notice, the light responding to their passage, rippling across walls and floors in gentle acknowledgement. Ketheri personnel paused mid-task, tilting heads, unsure whether to bow, salute, or simply avert their gaze. Authority had a shape now, an irregular, unprecedented one that defied protocol. Elias felt the pressure almost physically, like gravity shifting in a familiar landscape. Celira walked beside him, steady, poised, but her expression held something heavier than victory. She did not speak immediately, allowing the silence to stretch over the long, polished corridors. Elias could sense her calculating, not in terms of the contest just concluded, but in the consequences radiating outward. They'll be watching us differently now, Elias said finally, breaking the quiet. Not as advisors, not as diplomats, but as a unit. You and me. Together. Yes, Celira said. Her voice was calm, but there was a hardness beneath it. And together we're unpredictable. That terrifies more than it inspires. Elias frowned. Unpredictable can be dangerous. Only if you underestimate it, Celira replied. Some will see a human walking beside the highest authority of the Ketheri and assume either weakness or manipulation. Neither is true. Both are possibilities they have to navigate. They reached the edge of the council's upper concourse. Below, the city stretched like a lattice of glass and organic structures, shimmering in the early light of the artificial dawn. Ketheri citizens went about their business, unaware, yet somehow aware, of a subtle shift in the atmosphere, how the air seemed slightly more electric, how the order they took for granted had just fractured, and realigned in a way their ancestors could not have predicted. Elias exhaled, looking down. So, what happens now? Am I, what? Like a co-leader? Celira's gaze lifted to meet his. You are acknowledged as an authority factor. Not a co-leader, not a pawn, not a consultant. An authority factor. Your choices, your judgment, your understanding of Terran context are now variables that can't be ignored. The Council, others, must account for you in every decision we make together. He swallowed hard. Variables. So, if I make a mistake. She placed a hand lightly on his arm. Mistakes are expected. Failure to account for them is what they fear. They will watch us, yes, but what they cannot predict is how we respond, together. The tether pulsed. Elias felt a wave of clarity, subtle but undeniable, as though the Ketheri system itself recognized him, integrated him. It wasn't just symbolic acknowledgement, it was structural. A human mind, aligned with a Ketheri leader, had never existed in their systems. He felt both awe and a creeping weight. This was more than survival. This was a permanent shift in the balance of command. Below, Kaivan appeared on one of the observation balconies, arms crossed. Her gaze followed them with sharp calculation. Elias knew she was already considering contingencies, alliances, strategies, possible coups. And she would not be alone in doing so. Others would test, probe, and challenge this new status. Every misstep would echo as a political earthquake across the capital. Celira stepped onto the lower balcony next to Elias, letting the tether pulse subtly between them. She did not flinch at Kaivan's stare. Instead, she tilted her head, a gesture that was at once acknowledgement and defiance. Elias understood then that his presence beside her was not a safeguard, it was a statement. Their unity was not absolute, but it was undeniable. The news of the contest's unprecedented outcome spread quickly. Not through formal announcements or ceremonial proclamations, but through whispers, analysis, and subtle observation. Ketheri factions, long accustomed to rigid hierarchies and predictable successions, had to confront a reality that didn't fit their doctrines. A human, an outsider, had been recognized as a structural element of authority. In the upper echelons, shock was tempered by strategy. Traditionalists muttered about protocol violations, emphasizing the dangers of allowing an alien mind influence over city governance. Opportunists, on the other hand, began calculating new alignments, seeing the human factor as leverage. Each faction measured its resources, alliances, and potential for influence against a system that suddenly required them to anticipate two intertwined centers of decision-making. Kaivan's inner circle was particularly active. She convened her lieutenants in rapid succession, running simulations, debating scenarios, and in some cases, quietly preparing for the possibility that Elias could become a rallying point for dissenters within the council. They did not doubt Celira's judgment. They doubted Elias's ability to adapt to the Ketheri structure. Meanwhile, external intelligence units began scanning Terran networks for anomalies in behavior, communications, or strategy that could signal interference. Terran political authorities were unaware, yet, indirectly, they too would feel the ripple effects: trade negotiations, scientific collaborations, and military coordination, all now influenced by someone who straddled both worlds. For Elias, this was overwhelming. The weight of observation pressed down from all directions. Every word, every minor decision, every unintentional gesture could trigger an unforeseen response. The tether reminded him subtly that he was never acting alone, but that did not lessen the responsibility, it amplified it. And yet, in the midst of mounting tension, there was a singular clarity. Celira was not a leader to dominate through fear or control, she integrated, adapted, and evolved. With her, Elias realized, mistakes did not destroy authority, they refined it. The factions could plot, anticipate, or manipulate, but they could not predict the adaptive synergy they now represented. As the day progressed, subtle shifts began. Commands issued by Celira now carried implicit weight from Elias's insight. Khyven tested the boundaries of their authority in public demonstrations, challenging minor decisions, probing for cracks. Each time, the tether responded, bridging gaps in understanding before they could become vulnerabilities. The city, ever observant, began adjusting to this irregularity, embedding it subtly into its systems. Logistical chains aligned more efficiently under dual influence. Conflict scenarios resolved with fewer casualties. Dissenters hesitated longer, sensing the unpredictable consequences of intervention. Elias understood, more than ever, that the contest had not ended. It had merely expanded its arena, from a controlled chamber to the entire capital, and soon beyond. Even in a city as harmonious as the Kethri capital, discord could surface like jagged stone beneath a placid lake. Elias felt it that evening, as the bioluminescent veins of the city pulsed with the familiar rhythm of its engineered cycles. He had been reviewing reports with Celira, structural optimizations, trade forecasts, and subtle intelligence briefs, when a sudden tension sliced through the room. It was not a verbal cue, but a vibration, an imperceptible misalignment in the tether between them. Elias paused, looking up from the data display. "Something's off," he said, more to himself than her. Celira's eyes were fixed on the projections. "Khyven has been moving faster than expected," she said quietly. Her tone carried no panic, but there was a hardness in it, a crystallization of focus that always unsettled Elias. "She's positioning allies in districts we haven't evaluated. If she consolidates before the council reconvenes tomorrow, she could isolate our influence on the administrative committees." Elias frowned. "So we act first?" "No," Celira said, turning to him, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "We negotiate. Aggression without context will fracture our legitimacy. You need to understand that." He shook his head, frustration creeping in. "I do understand. But negotiation, look, she's testing us. If we don't respond, she interprets it as weakness. This isn't just protocol, it's survival. Strategy has to be active, not passive." Celira's lips tightened. "And what happens if we act aggressively and miscalculate?" The council could see us as manipulators. Your human instincts. She hesitated, as if measuring her words. Do not always align with Ketheri's subtlety. Elias felt the tether pulse unevenly, a warning he couldn't ignore. This was the first real friction, the first true test of integration. Their minds, previously synchronized by success and trust, now diverged in methodology. He could sense her irritation beneath the calm, the rigid discipline clashing with the impulsive Terran pragmatism he carried in every decision. "I'm not impulsive," he said, voice rising. "I'm adaptive. We've got intelligence that she's moving pieces. If we don't act decisively, all the acknowledgement I've gained, all the influence we've built, could evaporate in one night. One mistake from hesitation, and Khyven could undo everything we've done." Celira folded her arms, her posture a subtle display of authority and control. "Decisive action without foresight is recklessness. You may think that speed equals advantage, Elias, but the Ketheri operate on layers you do not yet perceive. The human measure of time is linear, one threat, one action, one response. Ketheri time is concentric. Every movement ripples across multiple nodes simultaneously. You could act first and still fail because you didn't account for secondary, tertiary, or quaternary effects." Elias leaned back, the frustration coiling tighter. "So what? I'm supposed to just sit here while she tightens her grip? Every second we wait, we're losing control. The tether pulsed again, slower this time, like a heartbeat that refused to synchronize. Elias realized, with a pang, that Celira was not merely disagreeing. She was assessing the consequences of his instincts against the full complexity of Ketheri's systems. And yet, he could feel the tension radiating from her, subtle, but unmistakable. It was the first moment where their union, previously flawless, showed potential cracks. Elias, Celira said, her voice quieter but firmer. You are valuable, your perspective, your intuition, your understanding of Terran strategy. But here, your instincts must be filtered. You act, yes, but only through integration? Do you understand what that means? I think I do, he said, though doubt lingered in his tone. It means I wait until you give me the green light? No, she replied sharply. It means you calculate with me. You weigh every option as if it affects more than one system. Because it does. And right now, you are underestimating the breadth of consequence. The room felt smaller, charged with unspoken possibilities. Elias realized that this disagreement was not about strategy alone, it was about control, authority, and trust. Their tether, which had been a conduit for coordination and synergy, now pulsed irregularly, reflecting their divergence. Elias stood abruptly. You're right, maybe I don't fully understand. But if we wait too long, Khyven will dictate the terms. You have to see that. And if we're not aligned, all this acknowledgement, everything we've built, it doesn't protect us. It makes us predictable. Vulnerable. Celira did not flinch. And if we move too fast, we trigger chaos. You call it hesitation. I call it preservation. You call it adaptation. I call it foresight. The difference will determine whether we survive this night, or fall into Khyven's shadow. The tension was electric. Elias could feel the weight of their decisions pressing down not just on them, but on the city itself. Every pulse of the tether reminded him. They were no longer two separate individuals. Their actions, aligned or misaligned, had ramifications that extended far beyond personal stakes. Silence stretched, heavy and unbroken, as each considered the other's perspective. And for the first time since the contest, Elias realized that synergy was not automatic. It had to be earned, cultivated, and sometimes painfully negotiated. Finally, he spoke, quieter now, with the edge of reluctant acknowledgement. Then, we do it together. But not passive. Not waiting. We move, carefully, but we move. We have to show Khyven that we're not just reactive. That we can anticipate. That we're a force she didn't plan for. Celira studied him, the tether pulsing steadily again, a cautious bridge reconnecting. Agreed, she said. But we move with calculation, not instinct alone. Remember, Elias, unpredictability without alignment is self-destruction. Elias nodded, a flicker of understanding replacing frustration. Then we predict together. She allowed a small nod. Yes. Together. Outside, the city continued its hum, oblivious to the internal friction, yet subtly responding to the new dynamic forming between its two most unlikely influencers. And somewhere, unseen, Khyven's eyes were already measuring the first pulses of their divergence, plotting the angles from which to exploit it, or perhaps, to fear it. The night had deepened into a heavy, almost tactile darkness, but the city remained alive with a subdued bioluminescent heartbeat. Every sector glimmered faintly, from the reflective towers of the administrative quarter to the pulsating veins beneath the residential spires. Elias felt it immediately. The city itself seemed attuned to their tension, responding to their synchronized, or unsynchronized, decisions. Celira's voice broke the quiet. We have exactly 47 minutes before the council session begins. Khyven will move within that window, using shadows and gaps in the district's oversight. Every second counts, but every action must reverberate correctly. Misalignment is catastrophic. Elias rubbed his temples. 47 minutes? It wasn't much, and yet, every microsecond felt stretched across dimensions of consequence he barely comprehended. All right, he said, attempting to channel the human immediacy that had driven him through countless crises. Step 1. What are we actually doing? Celira gestured to a holomap, holographic lines twisting like strands of living silk above the central table. District boundaries, council offices, strategic nodes, and Kyvan's known allies flickered in real time. We isolate Kyvan's leverage points. Not through force yet, but influence. Distract her supporters, preempt the vote manipulation, and secure the intelligence lines. Then, her gaze sharpened. Then we demonstrate initiative. Calculated initiative. That is where your instincts are necessary, Elias. He leaned in, studying the holographic web. Each line, node, and sector seemed to pulse with potential outcomes. Calculating, but how do we measure success? We don't know where her hidden nodes are. Celira's eyes glimmered with quiet intensity. We anticipate them. Not predict, they are unpredictable, but anticipate. Your human intuition can detect subtleties I cannot perceive without excessive processing. I need you to feel the gaps, the hesitation in her allies, the minute deviations from protocol. That is your domain. He swallowed. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him. Every decision, every micro-movement, could cascade through the city's political lattice like falling dominoes. One misstep, and Kyvan would seize total control before the council even convened. Yet beneath the pressure, there was a surge of adrenaline, a sense of purpose amplified by the tether between him and Celira. Their synergy had cracked earlier, but now, it was being reforged in urgency. Elias reached for the interface. The city's digital tendrils responded immediately to his input. He accessed the communications nodes, cross-referencing council member schedules, ally movements, and Kyvan's known contacts. Patterns emerged, subtle deviations that a purely Kethri mind would dismiss as noise, but Elias sensed the hesitation, the human flaw, the opening. There, he said, pointing to a flickering data line. Her supporter in District 12 is overcommit. If we redirect the council liaison there, we can neutralize her influence without confrontation. Celira studied it, her tentacle-like appendages manipulating the holographic data streams with inhuman precision. Yes. That is a deviation I would not have anticipated. Well done. Aligning our movements now, execute. They moved in concert. Elias initiated subtle communications shifts, rerouting liaison assignments, sending preemptive notifications, creating a digital illusion of procedural normalcy. Celira, in tandem, manipulated administrative sensors, subtly adjusting resource allocations and district oversight. Every pulse, every minor action, was precisely measured. Yet Kyvan's shadow loomed. The system flagged a disruption. An unexpected node in the northern sector was mobilizing independently. Elias noticed the anomaly instantly. She's reacting, faster than expected. Something's off. Celira's tentacles flicked across the holographic interface. Yes. That node is a contingency I had not calculated. We must adapt immediately. Redirect the liaison to intercept, but maintain cover. Elias, you will need to improvise. Improvisation, the very thing Celira had cautioned him against, now demanded of him. Elias took a deep breath. His human mind thrummed with potential permutations, weighing speed against accuracy. With one swift movement, he overrode the communication network for that sector, creating a controlled misdirection. Kyvan's node reacted to phantom data, diverting resources to a non-existent vulnerability. Executed, he said, voice tight with tension. Celira observed the system, then gave a slow nod. Impressive. That human intuition, it is beginning to integrate. But it is only the first stage. Kyvan will escalate, she always does. You must remain attuned. Every instinct, every misjudgment, has consequences. Outside, the city pulsed with an almost sentient awareness. Lights blinked and shifted as traffic flows adjusted, security drones reallocated, and minor administrative functions realigned. The entire network had become a living chessboard, and Elias and Celira were moving in lockstep, one human pulse and one Ketheri precision, dancing around Khyven's unseen hand. But Khyven was not idle. Another ripple appeared, a subtle diversion in the council's upper chamber, threatening to cut off their influence over voting channels. Elias felt the tether strain as Celira's urgency intensified. "We have less than 20 minutes before this node destabilizes the council vote," she said. "If Khyven controls this, the momentum shifts entirely. You must act decisively now, Elias." He closed his eyes briefly, channeling the tension into clarity. This was no longer about reaction, it was anticipation, intuition, and trust. With a rapid sequence of commands, he created a false data stream, drawing Khyven's node into a feedback loop. Simultaneously, Celira rerouted the council liaison in real time, sealing their influence on the vote. The anomaly blinked, then dissipated. Khyven's node had been neutralized without confrontation. Elias exhaled sharply, adrenaline spiking. Celira observed silently, her form a study in controlled satisfaction. This is what I call alignment," she said quietly. "You are beginning to understand. Not by instinct alone, but by integration." Elias nodded, but there was no time to celebrate. The council would convene soon, and Khyven's countermeasures were only delayed, not eliminated. Yet, for the first time, he felt the tether solid, a bridge rather than a strain. Together, human intuition and Ketheri precision had shifted the game, but the night was far from over. And somewhere, in the shadows of the northern sector, Khyven watched, calculating their next move, unaware that her opponent had already begun to evolve into something neither fully human nor fully Ketheri, but undeniably formidable. The city's pulse had grown frantic, yet measured, as if sensing the approaching culmination of their efforts. Elias and Celira moved through the control nexus with a precision born of necessity, each step, each decision echoing across the districts like a stone dropped into still water. The council chamber's holographic screens flickered, displaying the votes as they streamed in. Khyven's network remained unseen, but her influence, the invisible thread she wove, had begun to fray under their synchronized strategy. "Alert!" Celira's voice was calm but clipped. "Khyven is executing an adaptive protocol. She is attempting to bypass your liaison influence with a secondary node embedded within the upper council network." Elias's stomach tightened. Secondary nodes were Khyven's signature, a contingency within a contingency, designed to exploit hesitation. But hesitation had become a luxury they could not afford. His mind raced through permutations, possibilities, counter-permutations. "We redirect the secondary node into the decoy stream," he said. "It will see a phantom vulnerability and expend resources there, while we consolidate the real voting channels." "Agreed. Execute simultaneously," Celira responded. Her appendages moved over the interface, each gesture precise, a dance of algorithmic grace. Elias keyed in the adjustments on his terminal, coordinating timing down to milliseconds. The city's digital veins responded, lights blinking, drones recalibrating, administrative subsystems subtly realigning to create a false flow that Khyven's secondary node could not ignore. Moments stretched. The council chamber's holographic display pulsed with every incoming vote, each one a potential tipping point. Elias's pulse throbbed in rhythm with the streaming data. Every minor misalignment could trigger Khyven's retaliation. Then, a flicker. Khyven's node had bitten the bait. It diverted resources toward the decoy channels, temporarily blinded to the true network control. Elias exhaled slowly, relief tinged with tension. It worked. For now. Celira's voice was a mixture of admiration and warning. "Do not mistake temporary advantage for victory. Khyven will adapt. Her next move will be subtle, yet decisive. She is calculating the moment to reclaim control." The chamber doors opened, and council members began streaming in, their forms sharp and deliberate, yet unaware of the invisible chessboard unfolding around them. Elias and Celira monitored every line of communication, every subtle anomaly in movement or expression. Then it happened. Khyven's final counter, unexpected, elegant, and dangerous. A system-wide override attempt, targeting the Council's central procedural algorithm, designed to freeze votes and trigger default control in her favor. The city's pulse faltered for a fraction of a second, a glitch, almost imperceptible, but enough to ignite alarm. Elias's eyes darted across the network streams. He had mere seconds. "Sailira, we have one shot to stop this. Timing has to be exact." "Agreed," Sailira replied. Her appendages hovered above the interface, poised for synchronized execution. "We combine your intuition with my processing. We channel every input, anticipate every reaction, and intercept her override before it stabilizes." For a moment, time seemed suspended. Every light, every drone, every data pulse converged into a single point of clarity. Elias reached deep, feeling patterns rather than seeing them, sensing Khyven's intentions in a way only human intuition allowed. Sailira mirrored the movement with inhuman precision, rerouting procedural access, preemptively locking control nodes, and embedding a subtle feedback loop designed to ensnare Khyven's system without triggering alarms. The override attempt collided with their countermeasures. The feedback loop initiated, isolating Khyven's secondary node in a digital stasis. For a heartbeat, the city seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the council votes resumed, streaming in as intended, uncorrupted, unmanipulated. Elias sagged against the console, adrenaline leaving him in a rush. "It's done. She's trapped." Sailira regarded the network, her form a silhouette against the flickering holograms. "Trapped, but not defeated. Khyven's intelligence is formidable. She will not surrender, yet she cannot advance from here without risking exposure." This is a calculated victory. Outside, the city's lights resumed their natural rhythm. Traffic flows normalized, drones realigned, administrative systems stabilized. What had been an invisible war waged in milliseconds across vast networks now settled into a quiet equilibrium. Khyven's presence lingered, though unseen, like a shadow at the edge of perception. She would not forget, nor forgive. But for now, Elias and Sailira had secured the Council's integrity. Their combined instincts, human intuition fused with Ketheri precision, had outmaneuvered one of the most formidable adversaries they would ever face. Elias turned to Sailira. "We did it. Together." Her gaze softened, something almost akin to respect shimmering in her alien features. "Together. This is what integration can achieve. You are beginning to understand, Elias. And in understanding, we gain an edge that Khyven cannot predict." He smiled faintly, exhaustion and triumph mingling. The tether between them, a link once fraught with tension, doubt, and misalignment, had become a bridge. Not merely a collaboration of necessity, but a partnership of evolution, a synthesis of human intuition and Ketheri intellect. And somewhere, in the distant reaches of the northern sector, Khyven recalculated. The game was far from over, but for the first time, she recognized a threat she could neither fully anticipate nor fully control. Elias and Sailira had not just survived, they had gained the upper hand. The city breathed again. And in the darkness beyond the council chambers, the first faint hints of dawn began to pierce the horizon.